I developed this, I guess, fear of plant foods and of carbohydrates, thinking that they were going to be, you know, feeding the bad bacteria. And I completely restricted that. I ate meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Lots of bone broth, like lots of fat. And I got worse, so much worse. I was the worst I'd ever been. I put on so much weight. I just felt so sick, so toxic. And by this point too, these polyps, these like precancerous growths kept coming back, and coming back at one point, even within 6 months. I had a colonoscopy 6 months apart, and they had grown back and they were cutting them out that soon. I'd tried pretty well everything else. Like I'd seen these different specialists, I'd seen naturopaths, I'd seen herbalists. I felt like I'd already tried, you know, a number of different diets, and I was very committed to them. You know, when I'd do something, I'd really do it 100%. I'd completely quit, you know, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, anything processed. I found someone who actually used to do the paleo type diet for gut healing and switched to plant-based. And so I gave it a try, and it did help, most definitely. It did help, eating more fruit and eating veggies. Unfortunately, at the time, I guess the sort of plant-based that I stumbled across was this raw, trying to be raw vegan. That was sort of what I was trying to achieve. Fruit, of course, is very easy to digest, but not other raw plant foods. So while I definitely got some improvements, it's still, you know, I wasn't healing, fully. I was always doing a lot of juice. Like I really believed in, you know, the healing power of juice, and I was replacing meals with juice. So I think like that was the first issue. Ultimately, I wasn't eating enough. I was doing lots of herbs at the time too, because I really believed in this, you know, fruit and fasting and herbs. It didn't go well. I was wondering why I wasn't getting better, because again, I was doing all the things that I thought were, you know, were right. Not eating enough, not having enough fiber. That's really what I see was the issue during that period. And I did this water fast, and it did not go well at all. And I actually had to go to hospital after it. And that was a big, I guess, wake up call for me. I was really able to see that, this stuff, you can really take it too far. I'm not against having some juice or eating fruit and these sorts of things. And for some people, a little bit of intermittent fasting can go well. But it's taking these practices, I guess, too far. I had to do something different. You know, I'd been trying on this sort of raw path and with lots of juicing and all of that for a while, and I wasn't getting better. I was still having gut symptoms, a lot of pain, a lot of bloating, a lot of difficulty with bowel movements. So after that was when I contacted you. You said about trusting the body. Like, I think that's a really sad part of, you know, when you have these chronic health issues, that you really are taught that something is so wrong within your body, and either you need this expert like the doctor, or, you know, you need some specific diet, or you need some kind of protocol to address what's going on within the body. And it really creates fear. Like, I know I had a lot of fear. Like that, it was fear that led me to do these things, like, you know, the water fasting or the things that I did, because I was so afraid that my body wasn't okay. I was so afraid that that my body wasn't able to heal, that something was wrong. Such a huge part of the process of the work with you was really like moving out of that place of fear and just trusting that no matter what was happening, you know, my body was healing. I was just struggling so much, and I really found it hard to see the light through all of this. And I think you really held that hope for me when I felt like I couldn't do that for myself. I felt like, I just felt like I'd been so lost and so scared for a number of years on how to get better and have some sort of a normal life.
And what was the turning point? What was the point at which you go, hey, like, I'm actually seeing some difference in my body? now?
It was that some days, not every day, I was exhausted. I wouldn't need to, eat breakfast and then lay down. I was having to lay down twice a day, after breakfast and in the afternoon. Because I think when we started, I could go about 8 times a day. And slowly, sort of the good days became more frequent. And that was huge. And I think another really big sort of turning point for me was when my period returned while we were working together. And I hadn't had that for 2.5 years. My body seems to be finding a lot more balance. My digestion, continues to improve. I'm having the best bowel movements I've had in years. I don't, my bowel movements have never been so regular and so well formed. And I mean, that will change your life. Not only do I have the bowel movements of my dreams, I'm having a cycle that is, pretty close to perfect as well, which is amazing and just goes to show, how well my body is doing. I'm able to, what I wished for was just to go out and spend a day with friends, or, go out in nature and not have to, be constantly finding somewhere to lie down, or constantly be concerned about where the bathroom was because I ate and then I'd have to run to the toilet, sometimes mid-meal I'd have to do that. I was too concerned of, where I might go if I wasn't close to a bathroom. So it's just like, I've got so much more freedom now. I found it hard before to even read a book. I couldn't read a chapter of a book without being in so much pain with my head that, it was, my life before was basically like eat and rest and try to just get through the pain. And now it's like my life just feels so much brighter. There's possibilities for me, when I'm getting back to work and just, living more of a normal life. Oh, exercise. I hadn't exercised for years. The fatigue was so bad. I could walk or do a little bit of yoga. I always did that. But now I'm, actually exercising to the point of sweating and these things that just feel so good that I haven't been able to do for so long.
Hey guys, welcome to another video. It's testimonial time once again, and we have the lovely Isabella here, who is going to share her amazing journey with us today. Isabella has been through quite a lot over the last 10 years, and I'm excited to share with you her story, because you never know who is in the same situation, and you can get so much from these testimonials and see how these people have been able to overcome some of their issues by following a whole food plant-based diet. So let's get into it. And I just want to introduce you, Isabella, to the audience. So please talk to the audience about yourself, talk to them about your journey and how it started for you.
Thanks, Sham. So my journey started, I probably started having significant sort of gut issues when I was about 18. That's when I started presenting to hospital, and doctors at the time sort of didn't really know what was going on, but I had this, severe abdominal pain. And it took a couple of years, I got sort of, I guess, a diagnosis of IBS from my GP, but I hadn't seen a gastroenterologist by that point. But when I was about 20, I did. And that's when I had my first colonoscopy. And at the time, he didn't find any IBD, but he did find some polyps, and they were this type of polyp that they usually don't find in people until they're over 50, because they're precancerous growths. And he cut some out, he burnt some out, and he said to me after that, there wasn't anything else in there. Those polyps are completely unrelated to my other gut symptoms. I had the abdominal pain, I had really bad constipation, I had really bad reflux. So he sort of diagnosed me then formally with IBS and put me on medication for the reflux and put me on laxatives every day. That was his solution, that at about 19 or 20, it was appropriate to be taking laxatives once or twice a day as needed. And at the time, my mum thought that was very strange because she was a nurse and said, like, this is what we give to the elderly people when they can't have bowel movements. Surely this isn't the solution for you. And I think at that point, because I wasn't really having much help with what to, I guess, do about these symptoms or how to heal it, they seemed like, these Band-Aid approaches, that I did go and see a naturopath then. And that sort of started this journey, I guess, of me trying some different natural options. I saw a dietitian, and initially I went on that low FODMAP diet, and I did that for quite a while. But when it seemed like I couldn't really introduce more foods after that, and I was still having issues, I was getting really bad rashes. She put me on a different type of elimination diet. It's called this like fail-safe diet, and that's for really high histamines, and that seemed to help a little bit, but it was another thing that wasn't really a solution. And by then the symptoms were just getting worse. And I started to become like really a lot more unwell. Bowel movements were like increasing. I was getting, really bad pain. I'd always had really bad bloating as well too, like huge distension. And I went back to my GP, and she just said, it's just the IBS getting worse. That can happen. It was really alternating constipation and diarrhea at that point. And it came to a point where I was at home one day and I tried to make it to the toilet and I didn't get there in time. It was like my whole body just became really hot, and I completely blacked out on the floor. And it was when I came to and I screamed out for my mum. And I was probably 23 by this time. That we called the doctor and she said, take it to the hospital because I'd started having these bloody and mucus bowel movements. And so I got to hospital, and that's when they diagnosed me with UC, with ulcerative colitis. Because then I was like up to between 20 and 30 bloody bowel movements a day. I'd lost so much weight. And they also diagnosed me, I had an infection at the time, similar to like a salmonella. Right. And they gave me heaps of antibiotics. They put me on some steroids and things, for the UC, and sent me home. I was lucky, though, because of the infection, they thought that was the root cause of the trigger for the UC. So I wasn't on any sorts of like immunosuppressant drugs or steroids long term. But I did still continue to have issues after that. And only a little while after leaving hospital, my symptoms got really bad again. And I went back to hospital, and I'd gotten like a drug-resistant bacterial infection from all the antibiotics in hospital the time before. So more antibiotics for that, lots and lots of antibiotics. Saw a different sort of specialist, gastroenterologist, and had some treatment through them. And also at this stage, I went on a really low carbohydrate diet, like a paleo type diet.
Because you'd done your own research, or did the doctors tell you anything about diet or lifestyle at all?
At that point, I had done my own research, and I was sort of convinced that the paleo would be a good approach because of the gut healing and all the bone broth and these sorts of things. I really believed that. So I'd already started to implement that myself. And then when I went to this, it was like a specialist gastroenterology clinic, and they actually did talk about when you have these overgrowths of these bacteria or these infections, that it's the carbohydrates that feed them. Like, they were actually recommending this low carbohydrate diet. So yeah, I developed this, I guess, fear of plant foods and of carbohydrates, thinking that they were going to be, you know, feeding the bad bacteria, and I completely restricted that. I ate meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Lots of bone broth, like lots of fat, and I got worse, so much worse. I was the worst I'd ever been. I put on so much weight. I just felt so sick, so toxic. And by this point too, these polyps, these like precancerous growths, kept coming back, and coming back at one point, even within 6 months. I had a colonoscopy 6 months apart, and they had grown back, and they were cutting them out that soon. And yeah, it wasn't until I did find plant-based myself, and
That's because you literally had no other choice, did you? You were just like, well, this isn't working, so what else can I do?
No. And I feel like up until that point, I'd tried pretty well everything else. Like, I'd seen these different specialists, I'd seen naturopaths, I'd seen herbalists. I feel like I'd already tried, you know, a number of different diets, and I was very committed to them. You know, when I'd do something, I'd really do it 100%. I'd completely quit, you know, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, anything processed, you know, years before. Yeah, and it was because I found someone who actually used to do the paleo type diet for gut healing and switched to plant-based. And so I gave it a try, and it did help, most definitely. It did help, eating more fruit and eating veggies and these things again. It did, but unfortunately, at the time, I guess the sort of plant-based that I stumbled across was this raw, trying to be raw vegan. That was sort of what I was trying to achieve, which was obviously very difficult for my gut. Fruit, of course, is very easy to digest, but not other raw plant foods. So while I definitely got some improvements, it's still, you know, I wasn't healing, fully. And
this wasn't just, you know, the raw, because you then took it another step in the wrong direction, I guess, and you started to fast and do all sorts of cleanses and detoxes and things like that. So talk about your experience with fasting, talk about your experience with juicing, and you know, also give people some advice on why you'd probably never do that again.
Yeah. So I'd already learned, you know, a bit about intermittent fasting even when I was doing the paleo approach, because that's talked about quite a lot. And so I'd already done, you know, quite a lot of research around that, and it made sense. And so I started initially, I did do things gradually, incorporating, you know, some intermittent fasting, and but I was always doing a lot of juice. Like, I really believed in, you know, the healing power of juice, and I was replacing meals with juice. So I think like that was the first issue. Ultimately, I wasn't eating enough. I was doing intermittent fasting most days, whilst working a really, you know, intense, stressful job as well too. And then on my days off, I would have days of just juice, or some days, even while I was working, I would have just juice. And then I started to become really run down. And I think that was a combination of the job that I had at the time, as well, and also me trying to really push my body, I guess, to these sorts of extremes while working. That I became really unwell, and I had to stop working. And at this point, because I wasn't working, I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to do even more fasting, because at the time I really did believe, and because of advice I was being given, that basically the more of the fasting you can do, the better, or the more periods of, you know, only fruit you can do, the better. That's what will be the most healing. So I did a short water fast at home, and then I followed that with lots of juicing, you know, mainly only eating one meal a day, juicing throughout the day, only eating one fruit meal at night. I was doing lots of herbs at the time too, because I really believed in this, you know, fruit and fasting and herbs. Yeah, and it didn't go well. I was wondering why I wasn't getting better, because again, I was doing all the things that I thought were, you know, were right. I was, you know, yeah, I was eating fruit. I was trying to eat big salads, and that was so painful for me. It was so painful.
You had a coach that was taking you through this as well.
I did.
And that was, you know, obviously you were being reassured that what you're doing was right, and that gave you more kind of, I guess it was easier for you to keep doing what you were doing because of that coach saying that to you.
Definitely. I had a coach, and I, you know, made some friends. There's quite a big community of people out there that, you know, raw veganism is a large community, as well as then, you know, people who do fruit or lots of fasting or this detoxification. So I was really a part of this community. I knew other people that were doing it as well. And I guess the concept that you're taught in this is that any sort of negative reaction or any sort of symptoms that you're getting is just the detoxification process. And so to just keep going and it will get better. And I did believe that, you know, at the time I was doing lots of enemas and colonics. I would go and have colonics. And I did some longer juice fasts as well. I did one quite lengthy juice fast. And then last year it all came to a head when I did a longer water fast. And my body was already quite weak before that, because I had lost weight from all the fruit and the juicing and things that I was doing. Not eating enough, not having enough fiber. That's really what I see was the issue during that period. And I did this water fast, and it did not go well at all. And I actually had to go to hospital after it. And that was a big, I guess, wake up call for me. I was really able to see that, this stuff, you can really take it too far. I'm not against having some juice or eating fruit and these sorts of things. And for some people, a little bit of intermittent fasting can go well. But it's taking these practices, I guess, too far. So after that, I really realized, you know, I had to do something different. You know, I'd been trying on this sort of raw path and with lots of juicing and all of that for a while, and I wasn't getting better. I was still having gut symptoms, a lot of pain, a lot of bloating, a lot of difficulty with bowel movements. So after that was when I contacted you.
And how did that go? I mean, and you had been doing this for so long that you just had enough of this, and the whole idea of, you know, healing cannot take so long, or, you know, this whole idea about detoxification, and like we obviously do know about this as well, and we do know that the body goes through a healing phase, and obviously we have to also connect with our mind. It's not only, you know, your diet that you have to look at, and that's why you can have the perfect diet. I've said this many times, like you can have the perfect diet in the world, but if your mind is not in the right place, you will never get over some of the hurdles that you've faced in your life and some of the traumas that, you know, this may have caused. And that's, I think, what you were looking for. And when you first, you know, came to me, and you told me about what you've been doing, you know, I just said, you need to eat, you know, you need to eat food. And I think that was something that, you know, we got along pretty well because of that. And I said to you, you know, like, let's focus on the mindset and get away from this perfection mindset. I think that was a huge key for you to move forward and kind of come through to the other side. And I guess that was probably a really sort of wake up call for you, the conversation that I had with you as well, because I said to you that you already know all this amazing stuff about healing, because you're very knowledgeable on the subject. It's just that we needed to focus our energy on a slightly different aspect or perspective to see the body get better. And that was about relaxing and almost like putting less pressure on yourself to do a certain thing, which ultimately got you to where you need to be. And so I guess, yeah, why did you choose us? Or what made you think, hey, like, I've tried so many other things and I've been to so many other coaches, dietitians, naturopaths, natural healers, detoxers. What made you connect with us? And, you know, what was it that you found in us that say that, hey, I know that these guys are going to help me?
I think you made some excellent points with what you just shared there, Sham. And I think, the main point that I really like that you mentioned is, you know, I think all of us, when we've been through these sorts of health issues, you know, it has created some trauma within us. You know, it's hospitalizations, you know, fearing for your life. Like, these things are all very traumatic. You know, they will trigger you, and they will, you know, they will lead you to do all sorts of things. And I feel like that's what I did, because, you know, when you're in fear of your life or not getting better, and for me, you know, doctors weren't able to help me, like these people that weren't able to help me. And I feel like I had tried so much. That was when I did go down this path of things that now I see were very extreme. And I looked to you and what you and Shook were doing, and the people that you were helping, and it was so much more balanced. And I knew that that's what I needed. I knew that. I could see that, you know, you were healthy and happy after all these years, and the people that you were helping were as well. And that wasn't, you know, people weren't having to go to these extremes of doing, you know, these long juice fasts or, you know, eating all raw to be healthy. And, you know, you mentioned my mindset, like that's very much where my mindset was at the time. I was really stuck in thinking that I was only going to be healthy, or I was only going to heal if I, you know, stuck to things like all raw, or, you know, having like lots of juice, or having to have juice every day. I think I made juice every day for like 5 years, 5.5 years. So it was really key for me to, you know, do the work around my mindset and around things not needing to be, I guess, this ideal of perfection that I had created in my mind, or that I subscribed to, you know, that the most pure food was what was best. And to me, you know, from what I'd learned, that was raw. And it's funny because, you know, I always loved vegetables and eating a variety of foods. And you said to me sort of early on, you know, you've got to let go of the idea that plant foods are going to hurt you. And that really stuck with me, because I really actually thought that for a while. Like, I thought there were, you know, there was this certain set of foods that were okay, and anything else outside of that was not good for me, you know. It was,
Wow. Yeah, and absolutely. And I think another reason why we got along really well was because I also was once upon a time in that perfection mindset. And I guess people that have read David Klein's book, and obviously you reading his book as well, can get into that mindset where if I eat something else in the plant kingdom, I'm going to get issues.
Yeah.
And that's something that actually creates sickness. It's an eating disorder when you do that to yourself, and it can really make things worse. And I think you found that, you know, when I talked to you about it, I said to you that, you know, I had also experienced these issues within myself, and that I couldn't expand because I was in that mindset of, oh, if I do this, then I'm going to get my symptoms back, or I'm going to get issues again, or things like that. And I didn't realize that it was affecting me. And I guess told you about that, and you related to that. And that's why, we work together. And it's amazing to think that a very small shift in your mindset, which eventuated in a big shift in your body, could make that change for you. And it's amazing to see that. And that's why we're here, talking to you guys. But it's what's really interesting is that, again, when I was working with you, you knew everything that I was telling you, about healing and about what foods to eat, for example. It's like that wasn't an issue for you. The diet part wasn't as hard as, because you'd been through so much that it wasn't actually the diet. It was actually how to actually see yourself eat these certain foods, which was important, and how to react, and how not to get too caught up with if this is healing me or if that's healing me, or, am I going to get better? And trusting your body was, I think, one of the main issues that you had, because obviously you'd been doing something so perfect for such a long time and nothing actually came from that, or maybe something did. But talk us through your experience about obviously working with me, and how we worked on the mindset, and how these trust issues obviously came up, and how the confidence in yourself wasn't there, and how you turned that around for yourself, and many other things that you may have obviously gone through.
Yeah, thanks, Sham. I think, the fact that you sort of shared from your own experience, like you've mentioned that you, I guess, were caught up in some of that, perfection yourself. And you mentioned, Dave Klein's book, and that was the thing. Like, I had read that before we'd even started working together. I'd read that a while before, and that was part of, I guess, my motivation to be doing, so much fruit and all of that, because I believed from even that book that, fruitarianism, that's what we're trying to achieve. That's the optimal. So from talking to you and you sharing more about your experience with me, that was so helpful. And I guess so much of what we talked about was, not needing to go to these extremes to heal. Like that was something that I had really been stuck in. I really felt like I had to force my body to do these things, or put my body through these things that didn't actually feel right or didn't feel good, but I thought that that's what I needed to do. So I feel like that was such a huge part of, what we focused on. And I guess that you can be a lot more gentle with the body and still heal,
And
gentle with the body.
flexibility as well.
Flexibility.
Being a little bit more flexible.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like it's very rigid, to, I guess, think that you need to stay like stuck in something and long term. And I guess what your support did was, like, it gave me so much freedom, in my mind and with my body. I did relax. I did relax.
Because you weren't so tense about what your body was doing, and also what you were eating. You freed up yourself pretty much, and you let go of a lot of things. That was one of the most important things for you, is that you had to put all this behind yourself and go, right, this is a new sort of way of looking at my life, and I'm going to take the awesome things from what I did, but not make myself think that I need to do those things in order to kind of get better. And that was huge for you, I think.
Definitely. And I mean, and you said about trusting the body, like, I think that's a really sad part of, when you have these chronic health issues, that you really are taught that something is so wrong within your body, and either you need this expert like the doctor, or, you need some specific diet, or you need some kind of protocol to address what's going on within the body. And it really creates it really creates fear. Like, I know I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear, like that. It was fear that led me to do these things, like, you know, the water fasting or the things that I did, because I was so afraid that my body wasn't okay. I was so afraid that that my body wasn't able to heal, that something was wrong, you know. I mean, I was still having like blood in my stools or with my bowel movements. And blood was always something that I really found like it would really trigger fear in me. I always found that really scary. Yeah, so I think such a huge part of the process of the work with you was really like moving out of that place of fear and just trusting that no matter what was happening, you know, my body was healing. Yeah.
What was the I guess the point at which you said to yourself, okay, like I can actually see something happening to myself? And what gave you the confidence to keep going? Like, obviously you'd been working with so many other people, but you know, what made it kind of what made you keep going?
Largely, you know, the support from you, and I think just I guess you were always so reassuring in that I would get there. You know, like even though it was hard at the time, and I know I had such bad fatigue. That was, you know, I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue a few years ago, and I know that was related to my gut. You know, I was so fatigued. I had terrible headaches. I had all this gut pain. I had, you know, the more frequent, more loose bowel movements. And I felt like my life had been miserable for a number of years. I hadn't worked for a couple of years. I was just struggling so much, and I really found it hard to see the light through all of this. And I think you really held that hope for me when I felt like I couldn't do that for myself. I felt like, yeah, I just felt like I'd been so lost and so scared for a number of years on how to get better and have some sort of a normal life.
And what was the turning point? What was the point at which you go, hey, like I'm actually seeing some difference in my body now?
It was that some days, not every day, I was exhausted. I wouldn't need to, you know, eat breakfast and then lay down. I was having to lay down twice a day, after breakfast and in the afternoon. And sometimes I would be sleeping during the day, and you know, maybe I wouldn't have to have the morning nap, or my head felt a little bit clearer, or maybe my bowel movements were a little bit more formed, or I wouldn't go so many times, because I think when we started I could go about 8 times a day. Yeah, and slowly sort of the good days became more frequent, and yeah, that was huge. And I think another really big sort of turning point for me was when my period returned while we were working together, and I hadn't had that for 2.5 years. I'd come off a like really strong like hormonal medication, and yeah, just no period. And I'm sure that you know, the fasting would have contributed to that as well, you know, the hormonal imbalance, because since learning it's not really a practice that women should be doing, so that's been really key. Since that's come back, my body seems to be finding a lot more balance. My digestion, you know, continues to improve. I'm having the best bowel movements I've had in years. I don't, you know, my bowel movements have never been so regular and so well formed, and I mean that will change your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this is the most, well, I guess it's when everyone comes to the stage, they do sometimes forget to express how you know, tough it was, and I do the same thing as well. My brother's always telling me like, oh, you didn't say this, you didn't say that, like you didn't say how much pain you were in or whatever. And I think when we look back a little bit at your story and your journey, the headaches that you had, and so much of the pain that you went through, when it kind of goes away or when it gets less, you kind of forget about it. It feels like it's a memory. And how good does that feel? Because, I mean, explain to the audience, like, you went through some really tough times with your headaches and your migraines, and you know, like, that was crazy.
I've been in like physical pain, I would say, like, badly since I told you I was about 18, and that's when I started to present to hospital. And you know, I was offered different sorts of drugs and things like this, and you know, initially I took some of them, but then I stopped all of that. But yeah, over the last few years, my goodness, like, I got diagnosed with chronic migraines a few years ago when a specialist diagnosed me with chronic fatigue and the chronic migraines, and he actually offered me this drug, this crazy drug for the migraines that has the side effects were just, you know, insane. And I never took it. And but chronic gut pain, obviously, but back pain, hip pain, the headaches were just all day, every day, this very intense pain. Just there all the time. I mean, pain, is so debilitating. That was such a huge part of why I was so tired, I'm sure, was the pain that I was in. I just wanted to sleep all the time. I was so depressed because I was just in so much pain. Pain with bowel movements, obviously. So to be free from so much of that pain, it's
because you don't know how it feels to not be in pain.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing, and hats off to you. Your pain threshold is seriously amazing, and it's so cool to see that, you know, you're actually living a normal life now, and without any of these issues as such. And I think the mental aspect, I just want to touch on this a little bit, because it's not as easy as saying go sit in the corner and meditate or whatever. That's definitely not what I say to you. And I think it's a two-way street when it comes to the mental work. And when we were talking about that and how important it is to support the life that you want, and how this pressure that we put on ourselves that we have to do certain things, and this control that we think we have, I think you started to understand that a lot more when I was saying that to you, and how when we look at life, if we just get out the way, then life becomes easier. And I think this is one of the main aspects to your progress, was the fact that you just relaxed, and the tense nature that you had. I think because of this tension of, I have to do this in a certain way, otherwise I won't get better, or this idea that you had to be perfect to get the outcome that you desired, because and that control of that outcome that you wanted was, I think, the issue. And you honestly let go of all that, and you really took inspiration from what I was saying to you, because again, like, my life has become so much more simpler simply because I am releasing, and I'm not getting entangled with my thoughts, for one, and I'm just living life in a way that gives me the freedom from this control that I think I have. And it honestly, if you start looking into this, and those of you that are watching, it is quite out there, it is quite open, and you have to be quite open-minded to actually think about this. But if you look at non-duality, if you look at how, we are not who you think we are, and how if you realize that life is supposed to be free of suffering from our mindset, you will honestly go places. And I think that's one of the massive shifts in perspective that you had, which ultimately brought you to this day, and how you continue to be at peace with yourself and live your life in simplicity. And I guess talk to the audience about how you've been able to take what I've said, apply it to your life, and transform yourself in the way that you live your life now?
Yeah, I think, the key from what you've just been saying is the control, isn't it? And I really understand that, we want to control things because I believe, largely it's coming from, anxiety, or it's coming from this place of like we feel a sense of safety if we can control everything, if we've got control. And so for me, that was manifesting in, my health. I was wanting to have such control over whether it was the food or whatever I was doing. Wanting to have control over my body. And, that concept of let go, nothing's in control, and nothing is in control. We aren't in control. Having trust in your body, having trust in, I guess, a higher power in whatever way that, is to you, the universe, God, that I think it's actually a line from Joe Dispenza. He says, the power that creates the body heals the body. It's that there is this higher power to what's going on here. And we as this little individual don't have control over everything. We'd like to, because that gives some sort of false sense of safety for us. But it's not really true, and we had so many wonderful conversations about this and all different sorts of, concepts around it. And
it's almost ironic, this idea of safety that we think we need, because it's already there. It's already, the security is already there. We don't need to go searching for it, and we don't need to have that security within us. It's already there, out there. And if you can tap into that and understand that universe, God, or whoever it is that you think has this higher power, we are that power itself. And if you think along those lines, it honestly makes it so much easier. And I guess you started to understand what I was trying to say. And I guess learning to unlearn about what you've learned this whole life, and this conditioning that we have been told to be a certain way and to do a certain thing and to have all these rules. And if we don't do this, then this is going to happen, the cause and effect. And I guess you understood that pretty well, and it's pretty amazing, because once you get it, you see the beauty in this world that we have, and including yourself. And once you see that, life is, again, as simple as it can be, and it's very easy to live without suffering, and live without this pain that we carry with ourselves sometimes. And all these traumas and things can just slowly dissolve. And how did you start to understand that? And what are your thoughts about that, I guess, in your own way?
I mean, I guess the thing is, like you mentioned, I was really open to what you talked about, because they weren't concepts that were new to me. I think, I had been down a sort of a spiritual path, my own journey, for a number of years. And I think, what I recognize in myself, and really is, for all of us in one way or another, that we're so focused on our mind, it's sort of, I like this concept of like, we're floating heads, we're just living this life up in our head and with our mind wanting to control everything. And to really allow yourself to be open to the fact that you don't have control of everything. It's actually, the mind is just doing its job, trying to understand things and make up stories and find these sort of, like fixed ideals to hold on to again for that, idea of safety. But there's so much freedom that comes in just in letting go and realizing that, life is happening and will continue to happen, around you, for you. You aren't in control of everything. You never will be. So you're better off to just sort of try and relax and just enjoy. Things will come, there will of course always be challenges. And we have an innate ability, we're so resilient as humans to overcome these challenges. yeah, but we can't possibly control everything, and we definitely can't control our body. I mean, that was something I always wanted to try and control out of fear of what would happen if I wasn't in control. But the more that we've talked about all of this, and the more that we've talked about, yeah, just trusting and having faith, my body continues to show me this, and at times, our minds, I mean, we've talked about this, you acknowledge this with me, that sometimes our minds will get carried away with all sorts of things, even though once you learn about this stuff, it doesn't mean that then you know it and that's it. It's like it's daily, it's daily work. It's a daily practice, to catch ourselves when our mind gets carried away, to not identify with these thoughts, because we aren't our thoughts. We're not our mind. We're not our thoughts. To just...
it's amazing how much we learn about that aspect of life. And like you said, it's that safety that we need. But if we can find that safety in another concept, which is not ourselves, life becomes so much more easier. And that's what it's all about. Because, in the end, like I said, make the most of this life that you have. Don't worry about stuff that is out of your control. And again, living in the future and taking things from the past and putting them in the future to then try and predict certain things, the mind loves to do that. And I think it was really awesome working with you, because you started to understand these concepts and you started to apply these concepts to your journey. And after applying it, you started to feel like the tension started to go away, the stress that you had, the build-up was kind of just releasing. And I thought that was really phenomenal in seeing the body progress and seeing you go through this, which is really fascinating for me, because you're probably only a couple of clients, or only a couple of people that I've been able to expand on that subject and talk about that as well, which is interesting, because it is a very massive part of how you can achieve health and achieve nothingness, I guess. And it makes you feel so much better about like where you are and what you're doing in this world, because it is what it is and life is happening, like you said, and instead of trying to get involved and entangled with life, you just let it flow. You don't try and fix it. And I think that's the key here, is that trying to fix something that you can't.
Most definitely. Yeah. And I mean, what you're sort of explaining too is, though, that like we are, well, I believe we are spiritual beings as well, but we live in a society where everything is mind. Everything is mind. And that's, there's a level of us being disconnected from a really important part of ourselves, and healing comes on many levels, not just on the physical, not just on what we eat, not necessarily even on our mind, mindfulness or affirmations or these sorts of things, but also, our connection to ourselves as spiritual beings and to, this higher power, whatever that is. I mean, we talk a lot about nature. I mean, even if you don't believe in God, we are a part of nature, and, nature isn't in control. We're not in control of nature. Nature just is. So I think, this concept of really not everything being so focused on us as the individual as well too, which this, having a rich sort of, I guess, spiritual life as well, and your connection to nature or to God or, to other human beings, not so focused on the self, on the I, is really important. And having faith, having faith. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it. It's very simple. There's nothing complicated about how we're living our lives nowadays, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to do certain things to achieve greatness, or you don't need lots of money to be happy, or you know, what are all those things? Like, you can manifest anything in your life if you want it, you know, and it just goes to show that this is the beginning for you, you know. This is just the start of how you can now live a happy and healthy life without suffering and without, you know, really worrying about stuff, because you don't need to anymore. And this just goes to show, like, it really is significant in your specific journey as well, because that's what you needed, and that's what you were looking for, and you got it. So talk to us about what your life is like now. I know you touched on 3 bowel movements a day and how perfect your bowel movements are, and I guess touch on that, and how much of a significant change has that been for you, and what kind of advice you'd give to anyone else?
Yeah, well, I guess probably the main thing, like you've mentioned, is the bowel movements. And because, you know, for years I'd learned so much about the gut-brain connection, and I believe that that's so huge. I still even know it. You know, if my gut isn't happy, I'm not happy. And it's made such a huge difference to my life, to my mood as well too, because, you know, the mental health side of things is really huge. Like, I believe that everyone that, you know, is affected by these sorts of gut issues, they're going to be impacted mentally. It's part of it, you know. And so my mood is so much better. I have better energy. I'm just a lot more happy. I'm a lot more joyful. My headaches have gotten a lot better. They're still there a little bit, but there has been something, you know, I see a physio for that. There's some actual, you know, structural stuff going on there, but that is improving. I'm really not in pain very much anymore in my body. There's still obviously, you know, like I'm still careful with what I eat. I can still, you know, experience some bloating or some discomfort, like, but, you know, I believe, you know, it takes time for the body to fully heal, and this is a number of years that, you know, I was experiencing these symptoms. But overall things have gotten so much better. And like I mentioned, you know, my period returning, well, I mean, when it went away, I suffered so terribly with it for so long. I was always so sick, so much pain, and not only do I have the bowel movements of my dreams, I'm having a cycle that is, you know, pretty close to perfect as well, which is amazing, and just goes to show, you know, how well my body is doing. Yeah, I'm able to, you know, what I wished for was just to go out and spend a day with friends, or, you know, go out in nature and not have to, you know, be constantly finding somewhere to lie down, or constantly be concerned about where the bathroom was because I ate and then I'd have to run to the toilet, you know, sometimes mid-meal I'd have to do that. I was too concerned of, you know, where I might go if I wasn't close to a bathroom. So it's just like I've got so much more freedom now. I found it hard before to even read a book. I couldn't read a chapter of a book without being in so much pain with my head that, yeah, it was, my life before was basically like eat and rest and try to just get through the pain. And now it's like my life just feels so much brighter. There's possibilities for me, you know, when I'm, you know, getting back to work and just, living more of a normal life. Oh, exercise. I hadn't exercised for years. The fatigue was so bad. You know, I could walk or do a little bit of yoga. I always did that. But now I'm, you know, actually exercising to the point of sweating and these things that just feel so good that I haven't been able to do for so long. It's pretty amazing. It
is. It's been an amazing journey for you. And I guess what would you, any advice that you give someone?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main advice, like, I really feel is, you know, and the key to what we've talked about is to be able to trust our bodies. I think to really be able to trust our bodies. So much, unfortunately, of, you know, the world that we live in, we're told that, you know, doctors are the experts. And I'm not against, you know, all Western medicine. I think that they have their place, as do doctors, and, you know, surgeries can be life-saving. But unfortunately, that system really teaches us, you know, to seek outside of ourselves for someone outside of us to fix us, and that usually means, you know, drugs and surgery. But if we give the body, you know, the right conditions, it totally has the ability to heal. And that support is key. You know, I'd read Dave Klein's book. You know, I'd read so much on, you know, plant-based natural hygiene, and you know, yeah, I didn't really have to read the books that, you know, you sent initially, because I'd read them and I knew the information. But what was missing, I think, for me, was having that support, and finding that balance. Yeah, so I think support is key, and yeah, from someone, you know, like you and Shook, that really do actually believe in the body's innate ability to heal. You know, that was something that I was still afraid of, that maybe I needed to do something, be doing something more, taking something more. And you just always so strong in that, like, no matter what it was, you know, sometimes I was still going back to see, you know, the colorectal surgeon myself, and maybe that'd throw me off a little bit, because they'd suggest something and you would always remind me, you know, like, your body's got this, your body's got this. And well, I was contemplating having a surgery still, because I was having some bowel bleeding, and I was very close to having it. And I'm really glad I didn't, because I really do believe, you know, my body has come so far, and that area is healing so much that it will only continue to get better.
Absolutely. And this is a new way of life for you, new way of looking at life as well, and still holding that core that you had, but just shifting the energy and shifting the way that you approach healing your body and approach nourishing your body. That's definitely key. And so it's been an amazing journey to work with you for 6 months, and you know, it's gone so fast, and this is just like, you know, you've got another 6 months and another 6 months and another 6 months ahead of you, you know, and like you can just see how much the body is just going to keep progressing and keep getting better. And it's like, you feel like, oh, I'm happy with it right now, but in the next 6 months, you know, you're even going to be better. Yeah. And it's amazing what we, you know, put in our bodies, and how we think has such a profound effect on how well our body can function. And it seems to me that your body is functioning really well at this point, and I'm so grateful that you were able to come across us and you know, work with me, because it's always good to do a testimonial, and it's always good to hear your story and to share your story with so many others that might be struggling as well, and how, you know, you guys have the ability to do this, just like I have had the ability to do it myself, and the power is within you, and don't forget that. And you know, while we are here to help, we are also here to pass on the information that we have learnt for ourselves, so that you can take it yourself and do things for yourself as well. And hopefully you don't have to come back to us, obviously, if you do all the right things that we suggest, and how, you know, what I do with my life, and the balance that I've created, and the balance for your life is going to be a little bit different than mine. But, you know, balance is key here, and really giving yourself the best opportunity to do the best you can for yourself. So it's been a pleasure working with you, and, you know, it's amazing to see your recovery from where you were to where you are now. It's, you know, amazing how you've been able to do it within 6 months, and to get yourself to this position as well. So
thanks, Shan.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, it has. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And that's the thing you said to me, you know, like, maybe I'll forget, but you remember where I started, and yeah, to look back and see how far I've come. Yeah, at the time, you know, when I started, I had virtually no hope. I was finding it so hard to picture what it would be like to feel how I feel now. And I think that's what's so important, you know, for everyone to know, is is to hold on to that hope, no matter how hard it gets. that you can and will, you know, come out the other side. Yeah, it might be hard to picture what that looks like, but then once you get there, it's amazing. It's so worth it.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And yeah, I'm sure someone out there might obviously relate, and you know, hopefully they get in contact with us, or even, you know, go onto a plant-based diet if they're not on a plant-based diet already, and take some of the information from my channel. So
Definitely.
yeah, it was lovely.
Because that is the one thing that I should say, Sham, though, that from having a colonoscopy since going plant-based, my body no longer grows those cancerous growths in my colon. And that was something that my doctor never understood why they were there. And since going plant-based, they're no longer there. So that's enough for me.
Yeah, it shows you the power of plant-based, and how, you know, cancer is just a lifestyle condition, and if we eat the right foods, we can eliminate those cancerous cells and not let them grow. And you know, the environment that you want in your body is a cancer-free environment, and that's what a plant-based diet can do. You know, so well done, and keep in touch, obviously, and I'll come over to Cairns one day and see you, obviously, after all this is finished.
We will, for sure.
But
eat all the fruit.
Lovely to meet you as well, and I can't wait to meet you in person, and you know, give you a big fat hug and say well done. So yeah, all the best, and thanks once again for sharing your journey.
Thank you.